Okay, I guess that I will just get things started here. So first of all, for everybody who is listening in or joining, welcome to this roundtable discussion on parametric real estate. I already see some people dropping in. It would be really nice if you kind of introduce yourself shortly in the chat for the participants, so that we kind of know later on who will be present. But I will first, and we have we have totally five people here who are going to talk. So I would like to do a really short round of introduction of the people on the panel. So let me just give turns because I don't know if you're in the same order as me. So first I will give the turn to Gijs.
Thank you. Gijs Joosten, Senior Architect at Royal Haskoning DHV and computational design expert.
Cool. Rashid, your turn.
Hi, Rashid Abu Hassan, founder of Platform 78, computational engineering firm here in Amsterdam. Background in the industry, some 20 years with the Arab in Amsterdam and New York, and here in the Netherlands for the last 7 years.
Cool, thanks. Cheered. Oh, you're not you're muted. No, we don't hear you. Maybe in the meanwhile, John.
Yes, thanks. John Cox. I'm a senior construction cost consultant working with IGG Bouwen, a Dutch construction cost consultancy firm.
Okay, cheered. Are you audible? No, still not. Okay, maybe while he tries to fix that, I'll briefly introduce what this session is about. So we're going to talk about parametric real estate. I shared my screen. I hope that you guys can all see it. So I'll switch over for a bit. Well, again, first of all, thanks to the panel, all the people on the panel for being here. Great that you have all joined. I think I kind of selected you guys because you're all, I guess, in some way related to parametrics and real estate, or your companies. So the perfect people to talk about. And I would also definitely invite the audience, if you want to know anything more, then please leave a message in the chat, and then we can always later on connect also with these people. I forgot to introduce myself, by the way, but first I'll take another look. Is Cheered already audible again? Cheered? No, still not. You were audible before. Anyway, in the meanwhile, I'll do myself then. So my name is Jeroen Koenders. I'll moderate this panel a bit. So I'm kind of like the timekeeper here. I'm one of the founders of White Linus, which is a company that builds Pack.io, which is a platform for parametric design on the cloud. One more try. Cheered.
One more try. Can you hear
yes,
me?
Yes, yeah, we hear you now.
Perfect, loud and clear. Hi, my name is Geert Hamilton. I'm from Sweco, Netherlands. I'm a leading expert on BIM. Have an architectural background and quite experience in parametric modeling. Also do a part of digital strategy and work cross-border with the Sweco group.
Cool, thanks a lot. Great. So back to the presentation then. So we have to improvise a bit today. So what is this whole parametric real estate development about? So first of all, I hope that everybody is aware these days that there's lots of parametric systems out there, which allow us to kind of basically define our own kind of like logic of design, and also to define our own analysis. And the nice thing about this is that we can give immediate insight into results, right? And those results can be all your key performance indicators. So you kind of have a very fast calculation. I usually compare it to Excel, but it's more graphical, and you have a more direct relationship to all kinds of, for instance, CAD geometry, BIM geometry. So It means that you can change very fast. It means that you have insight very fast. This means that you can explore all kinds of scenarios and get immediate feedback on those scenarios. And of course, this is nice when you want to, for instance, develop an area. I'm just showing a movie, by the way, of a kind of a real estate example where you can see the cost, but also the potential return from a building. And which is, by the way, a model that I made literally, I think, in 2 hours. And this also gives you a bit of a feel for how fast this actually and how easy this is these days. It means that you can generate options and all kinds of optimization, but I think there's also something coming now that you can integrate analysis with all kinds of data sources from the environment and also from suppliers, which makes it very powerful. And once you have done that, so once you basically made this kind of a plan, everything can follow automated. So engineering can follow automated from suppliers. You can digitize the production, assembly, etc. So this is just like maybe to set the stage a little bit. I also wanted to show, I need to click somewhere else, that of course if you combine this with other ideas of, that these days we design everything digital, that the parts can be digitized by the suppliers and you can bring them together on, well, a kind of a platform or in a model. You can, of course, in a very fast way develop designs, you can develop plans, and you get this immediate feedback. And the other nice thing I think about it is that these days, there's of course, especially in the Netherlands, there's a lot of spatial data available, which can also play a role in a kind of a digital environment, so a digital twin, maybe, if you want to say it like that, of the environment, of the urban context, and it allows you, of course, to take this into account when you are, designing new plans. So I guess this is just a little bit to set the stage for the rest of our discussion. So maybe I can give the first person a turn, and I know that recently an article was published in the FD, the financial the newspaper in the Netherlands, about Feyenoord Stadium, which was designed in a parametric way. And I think we have two people on the table actually that worked on that stadium. So maybe you can give a few words about this project and also like maybe what role it played and what this might bring for the future. Gijs.
Yeah, that's true. John from ITG also worked on it. Roy Haskoning and DHV did the structural calculation part on the Feyenoord Stadium design. Nice design by OMA. And one of the first things that we set up in a parametric way was the main spectator experience. So if you look at the start of the project, there's a lot of rules and regulations that you have to comply with. Especially UEFA and KNVB regulations for the Dutch football competition. Basically what we did is capture those in design rules where we can set the parameters to play a bit with, for instance, the tier configuration. How many tiers do we want? How many rows do we have per tier? What is the ideal shape of the building compared to the spectator view on the pitch? And we set that up, first of all, in a parametric model to do an analysis, and later on developed some algorithms to turn the design process around and basically steer it by the quality of the line of sight. So instead of setting a configuration and then evaluating if the view on the pitch is right, we turn it around, find the target, and find the shape that matches that target. And from there on, we were able to basically connect the different engineering workflows. And a philosophy that we are investigating and further developing now is an API-first development. So what we want to do is connect different types of software based on data. And that makes it a very powerful, I would not say tool, but more a design and working strategy. And that allows you to eventually connect with data all the different expertises and disciplines. And maybe this is something that maybe John can also elaborate a bit on, because you were doing other parts of the stadium design, the cost consultancy part.
Yeah, the cost consultancy for the whole stadium, but also the whole spectator experience. And I think that there's for cost input into those models still a big opportunity, because looking at all the parametric designs that are done right now, it's I think mainly based on shape, on function, but when we're able to add a lot of especially smart cost information to those models, you could get a lot more output from that and have even more options and decisions based on the optimum quality for those projects. Looking at your very first model that you put up, Jeroen, of the real estate development, there were some numbers in there, I think, of possible cost and revenue. Putting those numbers in, it could be done very easily by square meter rates, but especially for high intensity real estate developments in complex areas, you need far smarter cost information. And the same goes for a stadium like Feyenoord Stadium, where the structure is so determining for the eventual cost. If we could also include those into models like these, I think your decision-making process will be way smarter than we're doing right now in only exploring some options that were determined by a couple of engineers, instead of going through all the possible options with models, which will be far quicker and have a lot more results.
Cheers, I see you nodding a lot, so I guess you want to say something, or?
Yeah, I like this conversation because worlds are colliding now. You can see from a geometrical perspective that the 5D cost estimation is going nowadays hand in hand. So it's quite normal. It's getting commoditized. And when you look at dwellings, it's also interesting that in forehand, when you're starting to design things, you can also see immediately the cost estimation. So the parametric design is a method to generate these kinds of insights in forehand. So we're talking about scoping and about seeing how fast we can answer the questions of a client. This is a very good tool nowadays. So that was one of the reasons why I'm nodding, and also to mention that we are now looking at micro level, but when you zoom out on macro level, you can see that GIS and the world of the requirements can also play a big role in this. So talking about parametric design, it's only one puzzle from a bigger jigsaw. So.
Yeah, Rashid, maybe you can say something about how you view this.
Yeah, I think everything that's been said so far is I feel like we're all preaching to the same choir here, right? Because it seems like we're all on the same page. But so I mean, starting from what I heard, which was starting from you guys, I think this idea of IPI and kind of bringing in the different models or the different expertise and collecting the data and being able to work in real time. I think this is really very, very powerful. I'd like to add, and this is something that we've been harping on, is there's such thing in our opinion as design waste. We always talk about waste in the construction industry, but there is design waste because we grew up in an industry where you design, you stop at a certain point, you hand over to someone else, they do something, it doesn't work, they throw it out, you start again. And the beauty of bringing all of these different expertise and connecting them is that you're truly designing at the same time and using the data to inform your decisions and kind of creating this continuity from the beginning, from the client's brief or the developer's brief, all the way through until the building is occupied and being used. So that's an area that we really that sort of really hits home and kind of circling around and tying in the cost of it, obviously, is exactly, again, it's bringing this component from the beginning early on and letting your client and your designers be aware in real time of the impact that they are making as they sort of manipulate and move these things forward. And to maybe to finish on what was said with regards to this idea of micro versus macro. Again, like, that's the beauty of it, I think, is that you can start big and really go down very granular when you're talking about parametric design and digital design, or you can work in any direction. You don't have to worry anymore. The entire design flow is kind of flipped over its head, and it's changing, and it's a really interesting time to be able to leverage and to be able to talk about this and leverage.
Yeah, I would like to maybe circle back to Feyenoord and also to Gijs then, because what I hear is that we mentioned cost a lot, and of course I also showed cost in my video. But what about value? The value we create and we can also analyze for clients, because I think at Feyenoord you basically did this, right? It was also very much about the kind of like showing the value, and I think that's also what the FD picked up on, right? The quality for the spectators in the end.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing there is that by quantifying the requirements and the needs of the different stakeholders, you create a much more transparent project and process, and nobody gets left out, so to say. So what you could see is the balance. Trying to find the right balance between all the requirements of the different stakeholders, even if they are conflicting. And there is no nice design process if you don't have a lot of conflicting requirements. So, for instance, if you look at the Feyenoord Stadium, there is a requirement of 63,000 seats. You cannot have a seat further than 190 meters from the pitch, and you want the perfect line of sight to the pitch. Those values combined, you cannot create a single tier solution that ticks all the boxes. So there you already have an enormous amount of possibilities and options that you need to investigate. But I think the biggest challenge, and then I will circle back to what Rashid and Chiet are also talking about, is I hear a lot of discussion on digital ways of working and parametric design and BIM, where the model is centralized. And I think the model, so far, I've not been able to find a model that is a single model for everything. So I think that's also an illusion. Yep. So I think we've been, as an industry, trying to strive towards basically bringing everything together in a single source of truth, a big, collated BIM model. And I think we're missing out on the opportunities there. I think there is much more potential if you look at the different workflows and also the different disciplines and expertises, and see what the minimum amount of information is that needs to be exchanged between them. And so, for instance, John, where you were right about the cost calculation part. It's very hard to put all that cost calculation information into a single model, because there is tons of expertise that's sometimes proprietary, sometimes company specific, that has very clever rules and calculation sheets available. And I think what we need to do as an industry is find out what kind of information needs to go, for instance, from the structural model to feed into the cost calculation sheets in such a way that we don't have to put it in a physical model first before you can take it out again.
Correct.
And that's the API first strategy, and we're slowly creating the tools and the frameworks to be able to do that. So a lot of software is now opening up. A lot of initiatives are arising that focus on this data first approach. And I think that's where the biggest opportunities lie. So moving away from the BIM and the model part towards much more data-oriented and tailor-made processes.
Correct.
Anyone
And
want to respond? Yeah, sure, Rashid.
I was just going to add to that point, because I think that's a really important point also that you've just made. And to add to it is, we are no longer, once you take this approach that you're talking about, Gijs, we are no longer as an industry coming up against legislature all the time with regards to who owns the model and who takes responsibility and who, which is clearly hasn't caught up with the real world that we live in. So I think the way you are describing it actually answers a lot of that question and takes the friction that we currently see all the time. Companies not wanting to share models. Who owns this? Who owns that? So
yeah, it's talking about intellectual property. And you can see that it's now not that we only focus in one phase of a project, but we're talking about the life cycle of an asset. And then that's getting interesting, talking about dynamic models or static models and the usage and the definition of the models in these days. So I totally agree, Gijs, talking about information and about data instead of talking about geometrical models. This is just a part of the whole holistic view of managing an asset.
Yeah, and I think the biggest challenge is in there, because for the past 20 years we've been trying to digitize a process mainly oriented around drawings and documents aimed at human interpretation.
Yep.
And now we're moving towards data that could be directly interpreted, Jeroen was already mentioning it, by machines. I've worked for 13 years as an architect at the office of Cas Oosterhuis, and in 2005 we did the sound barrier project along the A2 highway, where instead of making just a box of drawings and putting it at the desk of the steel manufacturer, we started talking to the guy who was operating the steel cutting machine and just asking him, what do you really need?
Yeah.
I can put a box of drawings on your desk, but what's the information that you will want to find in there? And eventually it's the number of the beam and the length. So if I make an Excel sheet with the number and the length, that's enough to produce it. So why not skip the entire first putting it in a drawing for human interpretation so that another human can read it on the other side? Well, talking about design waste, here's a huge one.
Yeah.
And I think we really need that mind shift to also realize that the BIM processes that we're setting up right now and the standards that we want to apply to them still are basically the leftovers of quite an analog process. We need to ditch them altogether.
Yes.
And just reinvent the entire collaboration stream.
I would like to give the turn finally to John, because we're already slowly running out of time.
Agreeing with everything said, and I really like the idea that we need to go away from one centralized model, and that is the definition of BIM. We need to think about information streams and really be thinking about what kind of information do I need to share, which can I share, and is important for the other parties in the whole process. Because if we do that, then we can apply some really smart thinking about how we set up our data. Because that's the other big issue at the moment, is how do we assure that the data that is communicated with the other parties is of the right level of detail and of the right quality. Because that's also, if we're only sharing data and there's machine interpretation, then we need to make sure that the data is correct and assured by all the parties involved.
So in maybe the final minute, I see that Guido van Erp is asking a lot of questions. We cannot answer all of them, so I'll pick the shortest one. Who is going to manage this process? So maybe just like really, who would like to briefly respond to that?
I'm not a big fan of assigning a process like these to one individual who needs to manage it. I think you're all part of a combined project team. You need to be collaboratively responsible for sharing that information and come up with a strategy that works for your project.
Can I be bold and say, if you set up the workflow correctly, it manages itself?
Yep.
Because the nice thing is, if you validate the workflow and it works, it's like sending a document to a printer, you're not going to check if the printer is exactly printing the right words that you just typed in your Word document.
Yeah.
So if the process is secured and validated, all the output that you generate with that process is validated and managed.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess that we are kind of perfect on time. So I'll use the final seconds to thank all the panelists. So John Cox from IGG, Cheered from Sweco, Rashid, Platform 78, and Gijs from Royal Hoogskoning DHV. I would like to thank you a lot for contributing your opinions. If you want to answer any of the questions in the chat, feel free to chat about it, or maybe contact people about it. Or if somebody wants to leave contact details, it's also fine. Then we'll get back to you later. Yeah, I would like to thank the audience for being interested, and yeah, I hope that many people will get in touch, with us about parametric real estate. So, thanks a lot,
Perfect.
and see you around.
Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you.